Hello, and welcome back to the Let Me Add to That podcast. My name is Elizabeth Graswich, Executive Director of Public Affairs and Communications at the Los Angeles County Office of Education. We are the largest regional education agency in the United States. We serve 80 school districts and nearly 2 million children. We are excited to use this platform to take a deep dive into the conversations surrounding our students and schools in L.A. County. September is Attendance Awareness Month, and we are very excited to have two experts in LA County joining us today on this very important topic. We have Dr. Debra Duardo, LA County Superintendent of Schools. Welcome, Dr. Duardo.
Good morning.
As well as Dr. Barbara Ferrer, who is the Director of LA County Department of Public Health. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
So glad to have you. So we know that attendance is a critical issue. It always has been. But why is it particularly a critical issue in 2025?
Well, I'll start off by saying it's always been an issue. We know that if kids are not in school, they're not going to be able to learn. And we know that attendance really predicts the academic success of our students and how well they do and whether or not they graduate, and especially for our underserved students. But, post-pandemic, things have changed significantly. And so when you say why now in 2025, we really see that some of the attendance challenges that we've always faced have really been increased significantly. And so we have that, challenge of getting people to realize, when they got accustomed to being out of school for 4 years or for whatever amount of time, that now it's time, we have to have kids. We learned from the pandemic that remote learning is not the same as in-person instruction. And so we need to make sure that students are back, and we have to address all of the issues that all the trauma they experienced during the pandemic. So whether it was they lost a loved one or they were isolated, separated, from family members, not able to see their friends, not able to communicate or be present with their teachers, that all of that had an impact. And so add to that, our more recent concern with attacks on the immigration community and some of the fear and chaos that has caused just adds to a very unique time of us really needing to focus and ensure kids are coming to school every day.
Yeah, I would love to add to that and just say, from a public health perspective, how important it is that children do have an opportunity to learn. Obviously, the more a person is educated, the better off they're going to be later in life. I mean, all the data shows that people with more education not only have a greater chance of having job satisfaction, living wages, stable housing, but they also live longer by about 27% over people who don't have a good education. So just from the health perspective, we know how important it is for students to get to school. And as we continue to work hard to make sure that everyone, there's an equity agenda here, everyone has an equal opportunity to thrive and live a long and healthy life, we have to understand that some of that depends on how they're doing at school. I think the second thing is, as Dr. Duardo mentioned, when you think about all the reasons why young people may not be going to school, one very big reason why young people are not going to school is they're struggling with their own health issues or health issues of their siblings or their parents. So it's really important that not just the public health department, but all of our helping institutions understand how much of a priority it is for us to all collectively reduce those barriers to getting children to school and allowing them to then be able to focus on the task at hand, learning, and to do that by reducing those barriers that might be keeping them out. And as Dr. Duardo said, a lot changed during the pandemic. And so we have additional challenges that our families are facing. And for young children to thrive and teenagers to thrive, we're going to have to address those challenges in the school setting.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that was really cool that happened this past year is DPH and LACO partnered on a study. And out of that study, one of the findings was that connectedness is such an important piece of all of this. And I find that so interesting because we hear that over and over again from our guests on different topics, that belonging and connectedness are an important piece.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more that, when I think about why schools are so important and why it's so important for young people to come to school and to feel safe at school, it is because you cannot replace that connectedness easily with remote learning. And I think that was one of the big lessons we learned. And one thing that's awesome about schools is they're places where young people build their skills about how to stay connected, how to be good listeners, how to be empathetic, how to work as a team. And that's what our schools do just as much as they offer enriched opportunities for children to learn their academic skills. They offer an enriched environment for young people to also learn their social and emotional skills that allow them to thrive, both at school and outside of school.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, Dr. Ferrer is spot on. For children to thrive and to learn, they have to be both physically and emotionally well. They have to feel safe. They have to feel a sense of belonging. They have to be excited about coming to school and understand the purpose of why they're at school. And, the relationships that they have, not only with their peers, but with their teachers and other adults on campus, can have a significant impact on their outcomes. And it doesn't have to be the teacher. What we've learned is just one caring adult. It could be the custodian. It could be the TA. It could be the art teacher, but it's finding what brings students joy, what builds their interest, individualizing what's important to them, and creating instruction that's going to really make them feel like this is their school, they're part of a community, they belong, they're welcomed. And that, and also what Dr. Ferrer talked about, it's not just about what they're learning academically, but setting up those structures, those routines, those abilities to interact with others, to behave appropriately, and to be leaders in their school community. So having that good attendance is critical to developing and maintaining those relationships and those opportunities for our students.
And we also know from our research, as well as chronic absenteeism, that there are actual factors, right, that regularly contribute. Can you speak to those a little bit?
Yeah, well, I'd like to start on this one because I actually started off my career as a school attendance counselor. I started off identifying the students that were not attending and visiting their homes. And, one thing that you learn when you're visiting someone's home is the conditions under which they live. And when I was knocking on doors, I was knocking on not just apartment doors, but garages where people were living without water, without electricity, overcrowded conditions. There were people that were really struggling, parents that were working, they didn't have anybody to get their children to school. High school students taking care of their younger siblings, getting them prepared and ready for school, and sometimes not making it to school themselves. Dr. Ferrer can speak to a lot of the health issues like asthma and other conditions, chronic conditions that impact a student's ability to attend school. But sometimes it's just basic needs. It's their housing, it's their transportation. And it isn't because parents or students don't care about education. And I think that's the important message is everybody wants to be successful. But, when you don't have a place to live and you don't have food on the table and, you have all these other conditions, I remember seeing, children, crossing over homeless people injecting themselves on the streets near MacArthur Park, walking to school. And I thought, my God, the resiliency. I was amazed, I don't even know how these kids get to school, given the conditions under which they're living. So, we have to be more compassionate. We have to understand that there are real concrete reasons that impact and interfere with the ability for students to attend school. And that's the whole point, is going out, talking to parents, going to their homes, talking to students, and finding out what those barriers are. And then all of us as a county, whether it's Department of Public Health or, parks and recreations and libraries and DCFS, all of us having a conversation about what are the resources, what can we do to make it easier on our students and families?
I completely agree. And I would add, in my own experience, because before I was here working as the public health director, I did spend some time as a high school principal. And my deepest understanding about what are the significant barriers that stand in the way of children being able to do well at school is that attendance is at the top of the list. And then just like Dr. Duardo, when I, as a high school principal, would visit the homes of high school students who weren't showing up, I went in with a false narrative. My narrative was the children who weren't coming in regularly were partying or having a good time or, engaged in other activities that they prioritized more than education. And I want to say we all have to open our eyes. I mean, that was almost never the case. The high school students who were not coming to school, some were struggling with chronic health issues, including depression. A lot were struggling with unstable housing, not having an adult that was able to be present. Again, at high school level, you have all across this country, you have children who come here from other places in the world to get a good education, but they're often living with friends of families or extended relatives. And again, people working super hard to make ends meet economically, and high school students in particular left on their own to navigate transportation challenges, to navigate challenges of, having enough money to get breakfast and lunch, having enough resources to be able to actually show up to school every day was a challenge. I honestly was ignorant about how much that is impacting the ability of young people to do well at school until I saw firsthand that our approach is wrong. Our approach of just saying, you got to show up, you can't learn if you don't show up, and stopping there. I mean, that is true. You do need to show up. But when we stop there, we do a disservice to everybody. Young people not showing up to school need our help. And collectively, it's not just the job of the school. Here's where we need all those partners to really help make sure we're meeting the needs of children and families that allow them then to show up at school and do our very best.
It really makes me think of the power of one conversation that we have, and really your conversation today and work together speaks to that, right? Where county departments are coming together and sharing what's going on, sharing resources, or community schools.
Absolutely. And it's going to take all of us to make sure that we're taking care of our children and that they're doing well. So it's not just a school issue. It's a community issue. It's a public health issue. It's a safety issue. I mean, there's so many components to this, and it's really going to require all of us to come together.
And I think one thing that's important to note is there's a lot of pressure right now on schools. How are schools going to figure out what they need to do to make the space safe for our immigrant families? That's not just a school problem. And it's really would be incredibly dangerous for us as community partners to dump that problem on the school and the school administrators. That's a collective problem. We as a community here in L.A. County need to make sure our schools are safe. And they're places where young people can go and not have to worry that either they or their family members are going to be picked up by ICE. It's unconscionable that we are not ensuring that our youngest people, who actually are going to be the backbone of our democracy and community for decades to come, do not have a safe place to go at school, and that schools cannot welcome every single young person into their environment by offering them that level of safety.
I agree completely. I mean, well said. I just, would like people to think about this in terms of, through a child's eyes. Like if you think about a child that wakes up and should be excited about going to school, has to worry about either they themselves being confronted by ICE or that they may be separated from their parents, that they may go to school, have a great day at school, only to find out there's nobody there to pick them up at the end of the day, and how terrifying that is for a child. So it's hard enough for all of us as adults to even imagine what that would be like. But to have a child have to experience that is just so disturbing.
And there are 1.5 million residents in L.A. County who may be here with an undetermined documentation status. 1.5 million, and a lot of them are children. And then there are a lot of families that have some family members who may be here with their full documentation or their citizenship, and other family members who aren't. So this affects, so many people in our community, so many families. This isn't a tiny group of people that, really we don't need to worry about that much. This is a large segment of the population, and every child deserves a safe place to go and be educated.
And even for our people that are citizens, it's impacting them. I had my grandchild say to me, Mom, Grandma, I don't understand. Why is my friend afraid to come to school? Why didn't my friend come to the graduation? Seeing armed people on our streets, masked, and the trauma and the fear that creates in everyone. I mean, whether you're, documented or have been here for generations, it's hard to explain that to children in a way that they can understand it.
Yeah, and I know that under your leadership, LACO really jumped on this right away in terms of pulling together a committee, a task force really to start addressing it. And then very proudly, your student advisors also have taken efforts. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, I always say if you have a problem that you're trying to solve, talk to the youth. They are so incredibly smart and so capable, and given the opportunity, they will help come up with some really, great solutions. So not only did we do this whole Know Your Rights campaign and reach out to all of the education communities, all 80 of our districts, but also to parents and to our student advisory group who went out and were taking this information to their peers, to their parents, to their families. And they're just such an amazing group to work with. And it was an issue that they selected because it's our Student Advisory Council that every year comes up with a key issue that they want to focus on. And this was one that was really important to them.
So in this really complex environment, what are some of the strategies that schools can use to support strong attendance?
Well, I'll start off by saying one of the things is you have to understand the extent of the problem. So we really need to have good attendance records. We need to look at the data that we're collecting, and we need to disaggregate that data because sometimes, a school can say, wow, we have a 96% attendance rate. We're doing great. And then when you disaggregate the data, you find out, well, wait a minute. Your kindergartners, your youngest children have the highest rate of chronic absenteeism, and what's going on there, or what's happening with our ninth graders that have just transitioned in from middle school. Why are they not attending school regularly? Or let's look at our students with disabilities. Those students are having some unique challenges that are preventing them from attending school regularly. So one is, I say, you need to collect data and you need to really analyze that data to understand what the problem is. And then you need to engage the entire school community, parents, our county departments, our nonprofits to really come up with some solutions to provide resources and support, create those meaningful, rigorous learning environments, right? Because it's also on us as schools. Not only, once we get them there, we need to make sure they're excited to learn, that instruction is rigorous, that it's culturally relevant, that children feel like they're seen and they have the opportunity to decide how they learn, especially for neurodiverse students. Everybody learns in a different way. So it's not a one size fits all. We really have to figure out what's going to work best for that student and really build this ownership ownership and this sense of urgency around school attendance, that it is something that it's not just one person at the school or, one person in the community. It is all of us. It's going to require all of us. When students are out in the community on school days, we want community members to gently remind them, hey, how come you're not in school? And, we want businesses to help promote our attendance campaigns. We want people in the health and medical field, pediatricians, to ask questions when they're seeing their patients about school attendance and are they enrolled and how important school attendance is. So those kinds of things of everybody working together holistically to look at every part of that child, their family, and what we need to do to support them to be able to attend school regularly.
Yeah, I loved what Dr. Duardo said about, really disaggregating the data to try to understand the problem. I can give a really good example. When I was a high school principal, we looked at our data and disaggregated it and found that, first of all, we had about 25 to 28% of our student body were students who had chronic health conditions. And those students had the highest rate of absenteeism. Now, it also turned out, as with many chronic illnesses, they, for example, with asthma, some of them had really severe asthma, and they would have as much as one visit a month to the pediatrician to make sure that their asthma could be well controlled. I mean, we all had asthma action plans, and one big step in that was staying very connected to the primary care provider. But it also turned out that those visits that they were doing once a month were at 10 o'clock in the morning. Those were the appointments they were getting. Now, that's a system issue. If a high school student's going to have an appointment at 10 in the morning and they are responsible for getting themselves to and from school using public transportation, they're going to miss the entire day of school because of a 10 o'clock or an 11 o'clock appointment. We worked with the pediatric networks and our federally qualified health centers to really create a carve-out whereby high school students could get seen between the hours of 2:30 and 5:30 or 2:30 and 6:30, not having to extend the clinic hours, but understanding that the medical providers needed to embrace the idea that young people really needed to prioritize getting to school and doing well at school, and that their part of that could be making sure that they weren't having them come in once a month for a visit that meant they'd miss one day a month. And, some people say, no big deal. No, that's a huge deal. It's a huge deal. That's 9 to 10 days that they're automatically out of school, and they have underlying health conditions, which means they might be more inclined to get sick during flu season or in fact have an exacerbation of their asthma that requires that they stay home. So we can't afford 9 days out of school to go to the doctors for routine visits.
It's such a good point and such a great solution, right, to a challenging issue. You spoke earlier about some of the root causes being things like health issues, unstable housing, other barriers. What are some of the resources that are available for families in that area?
Yeah, I'd like to say, as the public health department, we're really anxious to be very good partners to all of our schools and our school districts and our school communities. One thing we've done is we've opened up over 40 student well-being centers in middle schools and high schools where we can offer directly on campuses services for students and their families. There are two components. One is this a safe space where young people can access leadership training, mental health support, support around connecting to a provider that can help them with their physical health needs, sexual health needs. But we also have a parent program where we're able to work with parents in every single school that we're at so that they too can become ambassadors and leaders, understanding in both situations, young people talk to other young people, and it would be good if they were sharing accurate information. And parents often talk to other parents, and we needed parent leadership. So this was a way of allowing the people with the lived experience who are closest to the issues that they're concerned about to shape the information that they have and that they then can share.
That's awesome. I remember when you started it. It sounds like it's still going strong. That's great.
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful. I mean, what a perfect solution. Provide healthcare at school. So a student doesn't have to miss school to get the care that they need. There are so many things that we can do. You know, here at LACO, we provided a toolkit, an attendance toolkit that we shared with all 80 of our districts with all kinds of activities, motivational type of things that can be done at school, working with parents, working with community, and working with students as leaders to make it clear about how important regular school attendance is, but also implementing programs like the community school model that makes the school the hub of community services and partners with agencies like the Department of Public Health, the Department of Mental Health, nonprofit organizations, bringing more mental health providers directly onto school campuses, and also those community schools do an assessment of what the need is in that area. So whether it's additional need with housing or transportation, you know, really coming together to have the community decide what is it that we need, and then providing those services directly or as close to school as possible, where it makes it really convenient for parents and for students who spend so much of their time at school.
You know, one of the things that you touched on earlier that I just want to visit back because is this message around just get to school. I mean, I actually put together attendance campaigns, I'm embarrassed to say, that had more of that message back in the day.
Just do it.
Exactly, right? But, you know, how do we get schools and educators to kind of shift that narrative and think about it differently?
I think it is educating them and making them aware of, you know, how complex the issue is, and that there are all these structural issues that have a direct impact on students' ability to attend school, and sharing that information with them, like we talked about, those basic needs that may not be met, and having more compassion. I know of one principal, and I always thought this was a great idea. The professional development days before the school year would start, he would take his whole team out to do a community visit. Like this is the market where kids attend. These are the living, housing projects where the students live. This is where they go to church. This is like, know the community that you're serving. And I know that there was actually an opportunity for teachers to walk through one of these living complexes and, you know, felt so bad because the teacher was saying, you need to do your homework. You need to be, you know, at your desk, in your room, in a private space. And they walk through some of the environments where our families are living, and they see, oh my God, they're at the kitchen table and there's like 10 other people in the kitchen and all this other stuff going on. So it really helps them to understand and to get to know the families that they're serving, and to be more compassionate and understanding, and to help problem solve. And it's also about changing how we talk to children when they're out of school, especially students that may have behavioral problems because of all the trauma they're experiencing in their communities. And like when a student is absent, when they come back, instead of a teacher saying, oh boy, you're back, you're so disruptive, you better behave, to an attitude of like, I really missed you. I'm sorry, you were out. Are you okay? Do you need anything? So it's all of that together, but really better understanding of the reasons why students are out, and having more compassion.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the one thing I would add is, we're talking about children, and the idea that we somehow think that children independently should take on personal responsibility for making sure they get to school every day, seems very short-sighted to me. I'm all for all of us, embracing the idea that we have agency and can make good choices. But I'm also a realist to know that the choices you make reflect the environment in which you live, and that really constrains some families a lot. And some students a lot. So we got to work together on shifting this narrative, because these are our children. I'm going to say we collectively are responsible for all of these children. They're our future, and we owe them an ability to actually make sure that we're giving them every opportunity we can to thrive and become all that they want to be.
Yeah, it's an amazing message, and I don't even know if you could top what you just shared, but saying as we close, I would ask you, what is the one message that you'd want to leave families, educators, and community members with around attendance? What would that be?
Well, I'll start by saying, how important it is that we message that it's all of our responsibility, that it's not just the school's responsibility or, the Department of Public Health, but that everybody, it's all of our responsibilities to make sure that our children have everything that they need so that they can attend school, and that we're supporting that. And that, we need to just strengthen that village that we always talk about. But to families in particular, I just like to stress how important it is that families understand that we're here to help, but also how important it is that they send their children, they do everything possible to get their kids to school. Because sometimes, we have situations, it's like, oh, it's my child's birthday, we're going to go to Disneyland today, or we're going to have an extended vacation. Or, sometimes when children are nervous about school, they may have a little bit of anxiety and they may feel a little bit of an upset stomach, and really helping parents to determine, is their child sick or are they feeling a little bit anxious, and really stressing that how important it is that they create, the structures and routines that, I've raised 7 children. I know it's hard, but, setting up their clothes the night before, making their lunches the night before, having their backpacks right by the door so there isn't this like, oh, my uniform's dirty, I can't go to school, So those are some things that for families that I'd say it's really important that you do everything possible to emphasize how important everyday attendance is, to our educators, to our teachers, to our custodians, to administrators. I mean, just so much gratitude. I know this is really hard work. It's gotten more difficult since the pandemic and since the situation with immigration. Just a lot of gratitude for the work that they're doing, but reminding them that, our children and families are going through a lot, and it's going to require all of us to have that compassion and build those relationships and make sure we're connecting with them every day.
Yeah, I love what Dr. Duardo said. I think, from the public health perspective, we firmly believe we all have to work together to meet people where they're at, not where we'd like them to be or not even where they'd like to be, but where they're at. And that means every family's special, and it's going to take way more than just the dedicated, committed, and highly skilled team at the schools. All of our educators, to make sure we can meet families where they're at. That's a job for the village that it's going to take to make sure that all children are thriving.
I just have to say that it is such a privilege and honor to have Dr. Ferrer as a partner, because you can see how compassionate she is, how intelligent she is, how much she understands the more complex issues that our families and communities serve. And it's just such an honor to be able to, partner with her in so many areas around education. I mean, this is just one, attendance. Our 80 superintendents were just so grateful for Dr. Ferrer's support during the pandemic, helping us to understand how to keep our students safe and our communities safe. So I just want to just say I am so grateful and feel so honored to be able to work with this beautiful, amazing woman. Thank you.
And I'm going to actually have to also acknowledge that the value for us in public health and having a partnership with our educational leaders, and Dr. Duardo is our county leader, is more important than almost any other set of relationships that we have, because for us, education and our educational institutions are our primary prevention institution, and we're big believers in prevention. So I want to thank Dr. Duardo for her leadership. I want to thank her entire team and all of the educators and administrators that work every day, every single day. I know there is no harder job than there is to really serving the needs of our young people and our families.
Well, I want to thank both of you, Dr. Duardo and Dr. Ferrer, for joining us today on Let Me Add to That, as well as all of our listeners who will take this message and take action on it. You can find more information about our attendance campaign and our efforts on our website at www.lacoe.edu. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please follow the Los Angeles County Office of Education on Instagram and YouTube at Los Angeles COE. That's Los Angeles COE. Or you can find us on Facebook and LinkedIn at Los Angeles County Office of Education.